welcome Tim Adams here, and we'll kind of get this started. So Tim will make a short presentation on Hunt, and then we'll get into the conversation today. So please welcome Tim Adams.
Hey, Uday. Thank you. Let's see. You got me on? Okay. Hey, good morning, everyone. This is my first time to attend this event. I actually met Uday at CERAWeek last year, and we actually had him do some consulting work for us. What we learned at CERAWeek was a lot of things going on in the energy transition, and we did not have, as a small independent refiner, we did not have a good sense of what was going on with the IRA bill. So we got Uday and his team to help us with that. He did a very good job, and he actually wanted to bring me to this event to give you a perspective from a independent refiner, especially as it relates to energy transition and even some of the products that we produce, maybe that's different from a conventional refiner. So we'll actually have a session here where we'll talk. He'll ask some questions, I'll answer. But before I do that, I wanted to go through and give you a sense of who Hunt Refining is. A lot of people don't know who we are. They get us confused with Huntsman Chemicals. They get us confused with Hunt Ketchup, JB Hunt. So we want to give you a sense of who we are as a company. But before I jump into Hunt Refining, I want to give you a sense of our parent company, Hunt Consolidated. They're based in Dallas, Texas. They were founded in 1934 when H.L. Hunt discovered oil in East Texas. At one time, H.L. Hunt, I don't know if he was the richest man in the world, but he was certainly, ranked very, very high on that list of being really one of the richest men in the world. He basically won his wells through a poker match in Dallas. He set up his headquarters in Dallas, and the company started in 1934 in Dallas. And so there's, a lot of people don't know this, but there's two sides of the Hunt family. I work for the second family. So the difference is they have shared father, different mothers. A lot of you may know Lamar Hunt, who owns the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he passed away in 2006. His son, Clark Hunt, owns the company now. So they were a part of the original first family with H.L. Hunt. Bunker and Nelson, which some of you may remember, tried to corner the silver market. I think it was in the late 70s. That's part of the Hunt family. Well, we work for the second family, which is Ray Hunt and his three sisters. So when H.L. passed away, Ray inherited the company at age 30, 32, and took on the original business of the oil company. And so there's a lot of different companies that sits in that portfolio. There is oil and gas, there is LNG, which is based in Peru, Yemen. The Yemen facility is not operating currently, just due to social unrest in that country. But the Peru facility is. They have a power company. The Sherryland Utilities here in Texas is a part of the company. They have a real estate company, an investment company, as well as ranching. They have some ranches in Wyoming, ranches in Utah. So very diverse portfolio of companies, not very large overall. It's probably 2,000 to 3,000 employees all total. And we sit under Hunt Refining, that is, sits under the oil and gas sector. So let me jump into Hunt Refining real quick. Hunt Refining is a oil company based in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It was founded in 1946, so about 12 years after the original company was founded, when H.L. Hunt discovered oil in Gilbertown, Alabama. So Gilbertown sits about 90 miles north of Mobile, just due north. He discovered the first oil in Alabama, and instead of off-taking that oil and selling it like typical upstream oil and gas will do, he did not like the offtake price. So what he did is he bought some land along the banks of the Black Warrior River in Tuscaloosa and built an oil refinery. The oil refinery, when he built it, was 3,500 barrels a day, and it was designed strictly to run that crude that was found in Gilbertown. That crude has since dried up. The refinery has grown over the years. We now are running about 84,000 barrels a day, added a lot of units over that time. And 2003, we actually acquired Southland Oil Company. It's a 10,000 barrel a day unit that was really about 2.5 hours southeast, or actually southwest of Tuscaloosa, and they had contracts to local domestic crude production as well as asphalt. So Hunt acquired that asset, and that brought our total capacity today to around 94,000 barrels per stream day. One thing I want to clarify, we do fit under the small refiner status. So that means in Tuscaloosa we average, even though we can run about 84,000 barrels a day, we average 75 just to stay within that requirement for small refiner status, and that has implications relative to the renewable fuel standards and things like that. So that is a capacity that we choose to stay under for the time being. We are the easternmost refinery in the PADD 2 region. That is important primarily because we have pipeline access to Colonial that runs from down here around Houston to the New York Harbor. We are the last injection on the Colonial pipeline, which is very important. It gives us an opportunity, given our capacity, to move products out of the Tuscaloosa region. It's not a big town. And there's not a lot of offtake right there to handle the capacity of production that we make. So having access to Colonial Pipeline has a really good benefit for us to move barrels up to the northeast. We do market gasoline, diesel, and asphalt. That is one thing that differentiates us, probably, is the asphalt. A typical Gulf Coast refiner is mostly a gasoline producing machine. We make a lot of diesel and asphalt on purpose to differentiate ourselves from a typical refiner. So how have we grown over the years? This is a timeline that kind of shows that. So you see the first oil in 1944 was found in Gilbertown. The refinery was constructed in 1946. You can see there's about 30 years that nothing really was done at the refinery at all. So for the Tuscaloosa refinery to survive after the local oil production had dried up, we pretty much had to turn the refinery south and grow. And what I mean by that is actually bringing in imports from Saudi Arabia, from Mexico, Venezuela, anywhere we could find crude. That's always been a competitive advantage for Hunt, is to find crudes that really nobody else wants to run, and be a good operator of those crudes. So you can see in the 70s we started expanding. We actually did our first modernization of the crude unit in the 70s. Actually in the early 80s we built a 2-drum coker, and in the early 90s we built a low sulfur diesel hydrotreater. Early 2000s we expanded that unit to make ultra low sulfur diesel. 2010 was probably the one I wanted to point out. That's where we did a $1 billion expansion in Tuscaloosa of the refinery. We built a hydrocracker, built a CCR plat, and actually built new sulfur capacity so we could even process even higher sulfur crudes. And on and on and on. So the refinery has grown over the years, and we certainly are keeping a close eye on what's going on in the energy transition. That is something that could pose a risk to our industry. Certainly, if people choose to move away from traditional transportation fuels, and Uday we'll speak about that in terms of what we're doing there. So I said it kind of a little bit earlier that our strategy really has been built around crude oil sourcing and processing. You can see we sit right there where, let me see if I can point here. Right here is a Tuscaloosa refinery. And you can see we bring in crudes from the north, from the south, and even local domestic crudes. So up to this point, really before the Trans Mountain pipeline is actually being constructed right now to move Canadian crude over to the West Coast for export, we have been probably one of the largest consumers of rail-by crude from Canada. That's actually stranded crude that did not have pipeline access out of Canada. Usually when that happens, it provides pretty steep discounts to get that crude to market. So we've been one of the biggest beneficiaries of that crude coming from Canada. And we'll see what this pipeline does to the West Coast. But right now we are still seeing some discounts that are worthwhile actually making that long haul from that region. We get crude from the south via barge up the river. We also have a pipeline that runs from the Mobile Bay that connects to the refinery, and we have a lot of gathering stations along that pipeline in Mississippi, in basically East Mississippi, West Alabama, where we can collect crude from really crudes that are being produced from tertiary recovery, where people are injecting CO2 into the ground already to capture those barrels. So this has really been one of the things that's differentiated Hunt, is our ability to process crudes that maybe other people do not yet want to process, just because of the difficulty of running these crudes. Now, one of the things that it does is, usually these are heavy, sour barrels, so it means that we will make a lot of asphalt as a result of the crudes that we run. So we have to be able to market those products, and also a lot of sulfur capacity that we need at the refinery. So if you look at our refinery on a per barrel basis, we have a lot of sulfur capacity that maybe another traditional Gulf Coast refiner does not have. This map just shows our supply, logistics, and marketing assets across the region. Again, the refinery, so you see the Tuscaloosa refinery here, you see the Southland Oil refinery that we acquired, I mentioned in 2003. So those are our main two refining assets that we have here in the U.S. And the rest, you can actually see, this is the Colonial pipeline that runs from Houston Terminal all the way up to the eastern seaboard. We are the last injection on the Colonial, I mentioned, for moving gasoline and diesel to market. And the rest of this is really our crude logistics. So we bring in crude from the south, we'll pipeline those to the refinery. Pipeline does not support the entire refinery. It supports about 48,000 barrels a day of the 84 that I mentioned. So what we'll do is we will actually bring in crude, and while we're pipelining, we'll also bring in barge up to the refinery. Again, we got a lot of crude coming from the north by rail. And then we got a lot of domestic production here in this part of Mississippi and Alabama that we have gathering facilities that will collect crude oil and send to the refinery. A lot of these terminal assets that you see here is split between gasoline. What we'll do there is, because the refinery is injected into the Colonial pipeline, we do need to comply with RFS, or the Renewable Fuel Standards, which means that we have to blend both ethanol into gasoline and biofuels into diesel. We can't do that directly into the pipeline, primarily because the pipeline will not accept those materials due to corrosion and water. I guess the hygroscopic properties of alcohols that will consume water or attract water. So what we do is we inject into Colonial pipeline, and then we'll pull barrels out of the pipeline and put them into our terminals, and then blend ethanol to try to meet our renewable fuel standard obligations. The other terminals that you see is where we have a retail business for marketing asphalt. A lot of people don't know this, but Hunt is about 25, well, depending on the year, between 20 to 25% market share for roofing graded products in the United States. So a lot of roofing manufacturing companies have built their facilities in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, really to make a hub, built them around our refinery. That way they can get pipeline access directly across the fence line. Where we make the asphalt, we'll oxidize it, make the coatings for them, and then we'll pipeline it to their facilities directly across the fence line to reduce their T&T. Another area that we're targeting is the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's like another industrial roofing hub where you have a lot of shingle manufacturing facilities over in that area, and it's one of the reasons you see the terminal in the Dallas market, so we can market asphalt into that region as well. And then the other terminals really is more for our paving business along the southeast, where we will distribute asphalt barrels to these terminals. These asphalt contracting companies will pick up barrels and use our products as binders for building roads, and so we have a big network to market those products. Otherwise, they would be sold as spot wholesale barrels that would just be sent to the Gulf and moved to Mexico and Venezuela and Argentina, other places like that, where we don't actually get a good net back on that product. So I think that, Uday, that's all I got on Hunt. and then we can let anybody ask any questions at the end. Okay. All right.
Thanks, Tim. It's good overview, right? And so I guess my first question would probably be, like, how's the landscape today for a small independent refiner? And there's been a lot of pressure on trying to eliminate some of the grandfathering that the small refiners have around biofuels and all of that. I guess, where are things today, and how does all of that play into what the landscape looks like for a small refiner?
Yeah, so for a small refiner, I mentioned the renewable fuel standards, the fact that we do apply for the small refinery exemption. Essentially what the RFS has done for a refinery such as us is it does put a hardship, and the hardship that we see is because we don't own a lot of retail stations. So the way the RINs is what it's referred to. A RIN is basically a renewable identification number that when you blend ethanol and or biodiesel into those fuels, you generate what's called a RIN. And the obligation of that RIN is generated at the producer. Mm-hmm. So we generate an obligation when we make gasoline and diesel. You don't actually get a credit for that until the point of sale. So if you don't have a retail network for gasoline stations and where you can sell your gasoline and diesel, then you cannot generate the value for that RIN. You can only create an obligation. So what we do with our terminal network is we do our best, because we don't have a retail gasoline distribution network. We only have terminals. So what we do is we try to generate as much RINs as possible. The other, and so that puts us at a disadvantage. So what we do is we apply for what's called a small refinery exemption as RIN prices ebb and flow in the marketplace and really put a strain on our business. And it's very, very expensive to get into the retail network. I don't know if everybody saw when 7-Eleven sold, I think it was like $5 million per store. So the purchaser of that transaction spent billions of dollars to acquire those retail distribution networks. So we apply for the small refinery exemption primarily because we don't own those, and also we're also disadvantaged a little bit in that we generate a lot of diesel versus gasoline. So biofuels, you can blend those into diesel to generate a RIN. The issue is people don't want to put those in their vehicles. They will put ethanol, for example, in their vehicles. So there's more of a blending opportunity in gasoline than there is diesel. So we're disadvantaged based on our product slate as well. So it is a tough market to be in right now. There's a lot of lawsuits to try to fight for the small refinery exemption. Government has been giving those out since the early, what I'd probably say in the 2010 timeframe, 2010, 2012, where small refiners have been given the waivers, but they reversed that, and so there's a lot of lawsuits right now that refiners are having to I guess group up and try to take on in the court system. So we have one of those ongoing right now in the courts in the DC circuit.
Yeah. And broadly speaking, the general hypothesis for a lot of us looking at refining markets is that the lower the degree of integration or the lower the degree of scale, the more exposed you are to the vagaries of the market, right? So does that still true hold?
Yeah, so we make a commodity product. So anytime you're in a commodity product, economies of scale is a factor. We monitor ourselves in terms of our cost per barrel, and I was actually speaking to Clay and Troy over there about this morning. But if you think of the traditional cycle for any business, really, companies get rationalized out based on their cost of production. Usually the higher cost of production gets rationalized out first. What's been going on recently with the government intervention in the energy space is a lot of companies have chosen to rationalize out because of ESG pressures and constraints, or I guess perceptions of how they are being viewed. So that's actually been good for the refining business as a whole. Refining margins have been doing very well since early 2022. We have seen some tapering of the markets recently. People right now are calling it the platinum age of refining. And I remember back in the early 2000s, it was the golden age of refining. I can only remember two ages, the golden age and the platinum age. So you can see that the refining industry is very cyclical. So we don't. A lot of people think that refineries are always making money, but it is a tough business, and you have to be a low-cost producer. And scale gives you that capability to do that.
So the last couple of years have been good for refining, but the general outlook, right, and I'll be talking about this a little bit, but we are kind of reversing the crack spreads to some sort of a historical average, right? We are kind of moving out of that high crack spread environment here. I'd be interested in your take on how you see refining kind of performing in the next year or so.
Yeah, so you're right. Well, we have seen probably some of the greatest cracks in the history of the industry. For example, I mentioned 2022 was very good. We were seeing cracks, and for y'all that don't know what that is, that's essentially the price of the fuel. In this case, diesel is where the cracks have been really good. The price of diesel versus a benchmark crude. In our case, we actually benchmark to Brent crude primarily because it actually matches our industry a little bit better, or our refinery a little bit better, in that we process heavy crude. So the cracks got up to about $70 a barrel. So to give you an idea so crude was running on an absolute basis around $80 a barrel. And we had cracks that were $70 a barrel. So it was it was a good environment that we were in. So yes, we have seen some tapering, but cracks right now for diesel has been around $35 a barrel. Historical average is probably 20, 22. So we're still well above historical cracks, even though they're not as good as the 70 that we got used to during that period. As far as the next year, we see cracks staying in this range, or at least we're planning for them to stay in this range, with some tapering, really depending on where the economy goes with interest rates, and do we have the soft landing that people have been speaking about. Again, there's a lot of pressure for refiners to exit. We do know that a lot of refiners have exited. They've got into renewable diesel. We're hearing mixed results on their profitability. So we've also heard of some expansions that's coming in traditional refining, as well as the big refinery over in Africa that we're waiting to start up. So I would say definitely the next year we expect cracks to be really good, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was a good run for the last couple of years, especially as a refinery that's maximizing diesel production, right, to the extent possible. So you talked a little bit about how minimizing cost of feedstock is absolutely critical. I mean, that's important for the entire refining industry, but particularly so for somebody like you. I guess any thoughts on what this Trans Mountain Pipeline is going to do in terms of accessing heavy oil feedstocks?
Yeah, again, we were able to take advantage of Canadian crudes mainly because they were distressed. They had no home. These barrels are very, very difficult to transport. Number one, they are the way that they're produced are bitumen type crude, so probably a 12 API gravity is what we've been processing. So that what they'll do is they'll take some naphtha and they'll dilute it to make it to where it's pumpable once it gets to your refinery. So because those barrels have been distressed and with no real way to get out, we were able to take advantage of that by building rail facilities in 2012 and then expanding those again in the late teens for the refinery. And we're even seeing it now with the cap line being reversed coming into the Gulf of Mexico, where as those barrels have more demand because they're on pipe as opposed to being stranded, that will certainly reduce our discounts that we see, which means for us as a refiner, so we kind of lose that competitive advantage of raw material sourcing that we've always it's always kept us in good business. Another thing that's changed that game as well is fracking. So fracking when fracking came to market, what we saw was a reversal really for a period of time where light oils actually were cheaper than heavy oils. And so that's not good for us because, again, our strategy. So what it means is we have to focus more and more on our cost and driving our costs down. So yeah, definitely the Trans Mountain Pipeline is going to have an impact on us. So we'll be looking for new crudes that nobody else wants to run just because they're very, very difficult. And if we don't find those, then we've got to find other ways to enhance our profit margins.
So, Tim, one of the things that was very impressive to us when we were working with you on this energy transition opportunity work was, like, you had already established a lot of interesting partnerships, you had already evaluated a lot of ideas, and it probably is a bit insular on our part to think that a small refiner is probably not looking at these opportunities at the same level as, let's say, one of the larger independents or the majors are, right? So I guess, can you talk a little bit about, like, is Hunt a bit differentiated there? Hunt Refining is a bit differentiated there relative to other smaller independent refiners. But then also maybe tell us a little bit about some of these things that you've been working on from an energy transition point of view.
Yes, I would say, so we have a lot of people that's joined our company that came from majors. The attraction for us was moving back to Tuscaloosa, whether you grew up in the area or you went to the University of Alabama, in which case I did. So like for me, for example, I spent half my career in chemicals working for majors like Dow, BASF, Eastman. But the attraction was getting home, getting back to the refinery. We have a lot of other people in our company similarly work for Exxon and other companies. So I would say that we do try to bring innovation to our business, and certainly energy transition is one area that we try to focus. We partner with UOP. We've always partnered with UOP. UOP actually built the majority of our units in our refinery. So we do have a lot of good connections. What we are doing in the energy space right now is we tend to look at things in terms of what is an existential threat to our business. We recognize that we got to be a low-cost producer, and that's always. But anytime environmental regulations come about, what we try to do is get ahead of those, because we look at those as stay-in-business projects, and if we can find a way to get in early. For example, one of the reasons we came to you on the IRA bill was if there's momentum to invest in something that the government is, hate to say it, providing tax credits or subsidizing, then we want to be on the front end of that, because we can essentially get a stay-in-business project taken care of on the front end. One of the areas where we have been focused that you learned about was a carbon capture project. So we have a carbon capture project under development right now at the refinery to capture our own emissions. It just so happens that there's a lot of coal bed methane seams that sits around our refinery. So we have some pretty decent geology where we think we can sequester without going too far away from the refinery. So we've partnered with a small company that is interested in entering that space, primarily because of the incentives offered by the IRA bill. And so we have a project that's, they're actually in the first round of getting funding phase for that project. So other things in energy transition right now, we're kind of in a wait and see mode. Like, for example, renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel. We just don't see anything that's changing the game right now. It's just not cheap enough to really, I'll say, to compete with conventional fuels. And people may still be willing to pay for them, and that remains to be seen. We'll see that probably first in the aviation industry with sustainable aviation fuel. But Hunt's probably not ready to invest in that just yet. But yeah, so we're definitely trying to get ahead where we can. And what I'll say about the energy transition, Hunter Hunt, which is Ray's son, he's really the one that's going to be running the company in the future. He actually refers to it as the energy addition. We like to view it as an energy addition as opposed to a transition, primarily because we believe oil and gas is still going to be around in the future. We hope our products is still going to be valuable to customers and society well into the future. So if we do anything at the Tuscaloosa refinery, it won't be to transition the refinery. We will add to the refinery to enter some areas of renewables and or carbon capture that we can enhance our ESG footprint.
So Tim, you come to strategy recently, but in your prior role you were running the asphalt business for Hunt. I remember the conversation that we had on asphalt, and I had like 20 pages of notes by the time we were done. And so I guess tell us a little bit about what's happening in the asphalt business today. And then a second part of that is, how do you make the asphalt business more sustainable? I guess, how do you improve its environmental footprint?
Yeah. So the asphalt business is, we kind of say this, I mean, it's not true today, but in a way, it was our feedstock that selected us into the asphalt business, right? So we always chased steep discounts on crudes. Typically those discounts are related to heavy, sour crudes. Over the past, I would say 10 years, we've tried to put more of a marketing focus on asphalt. We actually have a website called Hunt Asphalt, and where we try to differentiate who we are in that business, and really what differentiates us in that business is the fact that we produce asphalt on purpose now, which means that we select crudes that have specific properties, both to meet the product specifications as well as the operational specifications of what can really enhance our customers' business. And what I mean by that is, operationally, if you have a roofing shingle manufacturer, that if our asphalt can run on their line faster, then they get more production. So we actually focus on product specs, but as well as what can enhance their business to allow them to run their lines faster and increase their production. So I mentioned this network that we're showing here on the screen. We've expanded in the last 5 years. We've actually expanded our retail business, trying to get outside of Alabama. Alabama is probably a tier 2 market in the grand scheme of asphalt, especially on the paving side. And so in order for us to place all of our barrels into a retail business, we had to grow that footprint. And we do, a lot of the crudes that we source. So we campaign the refineries, both refineries, where we will go out and buy select crudes from around the world that we know is going to make good industrial roofing grade products. We'll campaign those products up the pipeline, and once we're done with that campaign, we will then shift to a paving grade campaign, and obviously the industrial campaign has got a crude slate that's more expensive than the paving grade campaign, but that's the choice that we make to want to be on purpose in the asphalt space. We also have invested in a research facility to support the asphalt business. One of the products that we just released was a product called Rapid Tack. It's essentially an asphalt emulsion where we use chemicals to mix asphalt with water. And I don't know if you guys have ever driven across a new road where they just put asphalt on the ground and you drive through it and your tires will actually track through that material. So this product, our Rapid Tack product, is what's called a trackless tack. So you can drive through it, your tires will not track through it. So there's a lot of innovation in that industry, a lot more than I thought before I got into it. You'd mentioned that prior, I was running our asphalt marketing group, and I had no idea. As an engineer in the refinery, we never focused on the heavy barrel. Even though we were in the asphalt business, we always focused on gasoline and diesel. But since we put emphasis in this area and really just trying to develop new products, there's a lot of products, for example, any interstate job that's not concrete, because that is a competing industry to asphalt, is a concrete business. In Texas in particular, especially around the Dallas area, there's a lot of concrete interstates versus asphalt interstates. But a lot of those interstates are polymer modified asphalts, where people will put polymers into asphalt to give it elasticity properties. But it's really a fascinating area. In terms of sustainability, this is nothing new. This has been going on well before ESG, and that is, people are always looking for ways to put recycled materials into asphalt. For example, shingles, they'll take shingles from houses after they reshingle a house. They'll grind those shingles up, and they'll blend those back into asphalt products. Recycled polymers is another example. Tire rubber is one that people are putting into asphalt as well. So it's a very innovative space. What we like about asphalt, especially with the new ESG areas, we kind of view asphalt, it's produced from crude oil. We are not turning it into gasoline and diesel on purpose, so therefore it means we're not combusting it, right? So the fact that we're putting it on the road is a form of carbon capture as well as utilization. So we're putting it on the road, the carbon is being captured in the asphalt, material, and people are able to utilize it by driving on it. So we actually view it as a good product to be in for the future of ESG.
Let me open this up. We have a few minutes before we wrap this up, so see if there are questions. There's a question in the back.
Thank you very much. Balvi Bogal with Citgo Petroleum. Could you elaborate a little bit more on your Canadian crude logistics? You said that you bring it by rail. Is that rail bit or diddle bit? And approximately, what's the minimum discount you would need to take into consideration transportation, reheating, etc.?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So yeah, it's mainly, so a lot of the barrels that we get is the dill bit. We'll bring it in to the refinery like you're mentioning, depending on if the trains get delayed, would pretty much determine the temperature at which the crude oil arrives at the refinery. Once it arrives at the refinery, we will go through a heating process to offload it. So we want it as heavily discounted as we can get it, and transportation from that area in terms of the discount that we would need, we'd probably need around $10 a barrel off of WCS. It's typically our marker to make that barrel worthwhile. And, it's not just the crude itself, just in terms of acquiring the crude, but also the yield value coming out of the refinery as well. We can only put so much of the Canadian crude into our asphalt to make our asphalt on spec. So a lot of our Canadian crude will go directly to our delayed coker, and we will actually process crude on our coker directly, which is very much different from a traditional refiner, where they'll run all of their crude in their crude unit, they'll make their bottoms will feed their coker, and then they'll turn their resid into gasoline and diesel. We actually do not do that because we want to make on-spec asphalt for sales, so we'll take a lot of these heavy Canadian barrels directly to our coker. So it's about $10 a barrel discount.
More questions?
Hello, my name is Matt McCutcheon. I'm with Phillips 66. Question for you as it relates to your diesel focus. Thinking through cracks over the last 2 years, as you mentioned, being more diesel predominant, how much have you been able to kind of maximize your diesel volumes? And then secondly, thinking about gasoline demand in the long term, assuming it declines, do you have a plan or a view on what you're going to do with the gasoline stream long term?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So as far as diesel and distillate in general, the refinery, we have always viewed ourselves strategically, heavy oil, refiner, distillate focus. When you do that, those crudes tend to make distillate, but they also tend to make asphalt, so they go hand in hand. And we've tried to minimize our gasoline yields, generally because you get some liquid volume loss as you process through the refinery, going through a CCR platformer or a semi-regen platformer. The dilemma that we're facing a little bit right now is because of some of the fracking has produced some lighter crudes. Those have become more attractive, and because they've become more attractive, you do get some better yields out of the refinery. So it's kind of pushed us a little bit more toward gasoline. Plus the fact that I mentioned some of the dilemmas that we face with blending ethanol versus biodiesel. We've had a need to actually get more RIN generation through our blending. However, as long as we can stay on the crude slates that we've been designed and really configured to run, we feel like we'll always remain at maximum distillate production. As far as if gasoline does go away in the future or become less demand as EVs become adopted, what we've done there, honestly, if we've looked at things that we can do with our gasoline pool. For example, can we use our platformer to turn those into aromatics production? There is a facility that BP used to own up in North Alabama Used to be called the Decatur Works. BP owned it. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's connected by pipe to Whiting, and it's a chemical plant that uses a lot of mixed xylenes to make plastics and various things. So if we did do something like that, it would probably be moving down the chemical value chain of making xylenes and aromatics.
More questions, Marcus?
You mentioned the carbon capture project that you're working on. Thank you. I would be interested in how far you would anticipate the cost for carbon capture would need to be part of your future product price. How much is that in relation, or how is the general funding scheme for such projects for a small refiner in US?
Yeah, so that is the so how I think the first question is how do we see carbon capture flowing back into the price of the product? I do not have a good answer for that. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things we're doing in strategy. Uday mentioned that I transitioned from sales and marketing to strategy. Mainly, I have a technical background, and we have a need. We saw that when we were at CERAWeek, that for the first time, refiners are actually excited about what's going on in this space, primarily because of the IRA bill. You know, at the end of the day, what I'll say is, as a small independent, we're a price follower. We're not a price setter. So whatever the Exxons and Chevrons and Phillips they deem that the price will be, we will have to accept. So as far as us and what we're doing in our carbon capture project, so I'm trying to remember. I think we have roughly 1 million tons a year of carbon that we emit within our system. When you look at our scorecard for ESG. What we're looking at right now is going after that first tranche of what we would consider to be the cheapest carbon capture, which is, if you look at a steam methane reformer, that's, you know, you've essentially got a syngas stream coming out of the back end of that unit that you're already using a molecular sieve to purify your hydrogen, which means you concentrate your CO2. So going after that first tranche does or probably is a way to get us in that space. We're not actually the primary investor in this project. We actually got someone that wants to do two things. They want to build the infrastructure for the offtake for the pipeline, as well as the sequestration. And what we've gotten them to agree to is they would actually build the facility on our site for capture. Well, where Hunt's role in this would be is we would actually have the right to invest. We maintain that right to invest as an equity holder in this company, if we so choose. But our biggest play is that we want to get this infrastructure up and built, because what we would like to do at our site in Tuscaloosa is attract new business, mainly in I call it the renewable space, whether it be for sustainable aviation fuel or RD. And we know, one of the things that we know is having a carbon capture project that actually has a home for the carbon for sequestration is an enabling project to attract business. So that's the way we're kind of looking at this. So we're looking at this one step at a time. We're certainly not making a commitment that we'll go after all of our carbon. There will be the option in the future to go buy credits. So you've got to balance those two. Is it more economic for you to buy the credits or whatever that looks like in the future for carbon versus investing in that in yourself? What we want to do is get the infrastructure built so that we can recruit new business. One of the things we view ourselves as a really good operator. We don't have deep pockets, certainly as a refiner, and we don't have a lot of technology like other companies have. So what we want to do is try to attract business to our site where we do have infrastructure and we do have operations capabilities that we feel we're very proud of as a company. So if we can get that built out, we feel like we can bring new investment to the site and then actually potentially get some off-take arrangements through that new investment. Now, I will say this, investment is very much flowing in this space. As a matter of fact, I went to a SAF financing conference up in New York not too long ago. I met, as a matter of fact, he approached us. He's actually over the DOE's loan program office, and he said he had billions of dollars that he needed to get invested before 2026, before some of these regulations expire in the RA bill. So there's a lot of money flowing in this space right now. As long as you can get a bankable project, which a bankable project is really an offtake and an operator. So if you can get those two things, people are wanting to invest in them.
There's a question in the back.
Thank you so much. My name is Brijesh from Mitsubishi Heavy Industry. I'm more into the clean tech investment. I have seen across number of clean tech technologies producing renewable diesel, gasoline, and each of this process is actually comparing with the benchmark carbon intensity of the fossil-derived, the diesel or SAF, be it. I just wanted to understand from the refining perspective, that is there a possibility to further reduce the carbon intensity of the fossil-derived gasoline, diesel, say by addressing the upstream emissions or the transportation, or investing into some, upgrading the process itself? And what this percentage look like 20%, 30%, 10%? Really wanted to understand this perspective from you.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think and I don't know the full answer to your question. It's a difficult question. I think what I'll tell you what we're doing is, yes, you can definitely enhance the efficiency of your facilities. One of the biggest things that you saw with the CAFE standards for gasoline was auto manufacturers improving their efficiency. That's probably been the biggest gain that we've seen so far. So I think just basic blocking and tackling in the industry, where you're not necessarily trying to push rate as much, which is what our industry has been focused on, and trying to go after efficiency. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We actually are okay in the future running less crude as long as we get more liquid products out the back end. And by definition, right, if we can keep more crude in the ground, get more products to supply the market, then we've inherently enhanced our carbon footprint. So that's where we're focusing as a small refiner. If there's a technology that's being developed, like by a UOP or an Exxon or some company like that, we'll leave that up to them. That's certainly not our focus, but I think efficiency improvements, but I don't think it'll get you all the way to what the government is wanting right now with some of these renewables.
Last call for questions for Tim. So if not, I'll take that last question, Tim. From an LCA basis, asphalt into the ground, are there studies out there that kind of look at what the life cycle CO2 footprint looks like for that?
Are you talking about just the emissions of asphalt?
Yeah.
I think, there is, and there's actually something going on in the Asphalt Institute. So Asphalt Institute is an organization that, I guess you'd call it our technical organization. It's not really a lobby organization. NAPA is more of the lobbying organization for asphalt. One of the things that they're trying to do right now is baseline refineries. So right now what you're seeing in asphalt is you're seeing a contractor. So for example, most of our work on the paving side of the business is through your state government. They will come up with a budget for paving roads, and a lot of these contractors, they will go in and make bids for these jobs. And what we do, we're kind of behind the scenes. We'll actually provide the liquid binder and for these asphalt companies, but now in the old days, all it was a bid. So you submit a bid, I submit a bid. Whoever has the low bid wins the job. Now what they're seeing is what's called environmental product dispositions for asphalt. So now you will submit, as a contracting company, you would submit a bid, you would submit what's called an EPD. I would do the same, and the government, for government jobs at least, state and federal, they would look at both of those documents and decide who the winning bidder is. That's actually taking place now, and what that focuses on is the emissions at application of the asphalt. So there definitely is a focus to control emissions for the application of the asphalt. Where that is expanding back to the refinery is so you as a contractor now, you want to know, where do I source my raw materials, where do I source my binder? So if I source my binder from Hunt, do they have less emissions than, say, Marathon, as an example? So that is actually being baseline now. And the Asphalt Institute is actually trying to manage that process to make sure that there's integrity in that process, because some companies could actually overstate their emissions. So they're trying to collect data right now to baseline those emissions to make sure that it's being taken all the way back, at least today, to the refiner. I'm sure eventually that will be taken all the way back to the crude supplier. Meaning if I produce asphalt with 10% Canadian crude, how does that stack up against somebody else that's running a Saudi crude, for example? So yeah, it's working its way all the way through the system. As a matter of fact, probably the asphalt industry is a little bit ahead of probably even the transportation fuels segment. But again, that's been going on for a while with that industry looking at putting renewables into the business. Yep.
Fascinating, Tim. Lots of exciting stuff happening. Thank you for doing this. Very grateful for the support and taking the time to come down to Houston and talk to us. So thank you again, and let's give Tim a hand, please.